What's your favorite scary movie?
Showgirls.
What's going on, all you ghouls and Ghostface killers? Logan Myerz back here for Cinephellas.com doing more 31 Days of Horror. And tonight I'm going to be revisiting a movie that I remember seeing was released in 1997. I'm talking about Wes Craven's Scream 2. So Scream was the movie that came out in 1996 that really brought horror back to the mainstream. It had people really excited for horror again. And Wes Craven really revived the slasher genre that set up many films after the original Scream movies, such as Urban Legends, I Know What You Did Last Summer. The list goes on and on. Bunch of movies, not as good as the original Scream, but it really kicked it off again. The original Scream is definitely one of the more perfect horror flicks, especially in the 90s. There's a lot of shitty, cheesy horror flicks, but definitely one of the best of the 90s. And I love what Wes Craven did with that. It really created this atmosphere, this layer of suspense and mystery, or weren't sure who is behind all these killings. You're thinking it's one killer, but it's two killers, so a really great movie. Love the intro of their first Scream. One of the best intros of all time, in my opinion. So that being said, we have the sequel in 1997, came out a year later after the original Scream, and definitely nowhere near as good as the first movie, and it's pretty much comedic, and I don't take it seriously. But rewatching this the first time in like 20 years, it's definitely not good. The intro of the movie is pretty good though. It's a movie within a movie, the Stab movie, based off Gail Weathers' book, What Happened in Woodsboro. What happened to Sidney Prescott and all her friends, so they made it into a movie called Stab in the intro of part 2. So at the beginning of the movie, you see Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith go into the movies to check out Stab, and it's probably one of the most fucking annoying crowds you'll ever see at a movie, and a movie that I would probably snap out at if I was there. People in the Ghostface attire, they have knives, the whole fucking movie, they're all jumping around, popcorn everywhere. I definitely would have punched somebody and got arrested because that really annoyed the shit out of me. But with that being said, it is a pretty cool intro of what the movie's about, Stab. It's revisiting everything that happened in the first movie. And Jada Pinkett Smith's scenes were really good. She's kind of poking fun at the genre, and Omar Epps is like keeping up with her. So it's a really cool intro, and then it sets up the killings. Essentially, they both die. One scene in the bathroom, and then Jada Pinkett Smith gets stabbed in the crowd because everybody's wearing this attire, so it'd be super easy to kill somebody because nobody's paying attention. Everybody's flipping out over this movie. So she gets killed, and it goes up to the front and like flops down, and is the intro of the movie. So that was a pretty cool setup. The rest of the movie really sucks. They fast forward, it's like 2 years later, Sidney Prescott's at college, and we get introduced to a lot of new characters that are no strangers to the 90s, especially in horror, and having to do with Kevin Williamson, the writer. I'm talking about Sarah Michelle Gellar, Joshua Jackson, Timothy Olyphant, Jerry O'Connell's in this. I hate that guy. The return of Liv Schreiber playing Cotton Weary, one of my favorite characters. I love that guy. I love the actor. Ray Donovan, how could you, Ray? Really great actor. He's been doing this thing for a long time. It's cool seeing him younger, playing the character of Cotton Weary, as you guys know from the first film. But the overall cast is pretty sloppy. It's not good. The best part in the movie is probably Jamie Kennedy's character playing Randy. He's the movie buff, as you guys know from the first movie, talking about all the things you can't do in horror movies or you will die. But in the second movie, it's more of that, of, you know, them in like a film class, and he's like ripping on other classmates, and Sarah Michelle Gellar, Joshua Jackson, Timothy Olyphant. Like, it's just really silly and so 90s with the attire and the hairdos. I love Randy's character, always my favorite characters in the movies, and I would just wish he had more screen time in the film to really, I think, carry it more. But Neve Campbell is definitely pretty good in this movie. Sidney Prescott, with her dealing with all the trauma from her mother and the things that happened in the first movie. She's moving on to college, trying to move on with her life, get through school, you know, and get her adult job and all that fun stuff. But she's pretty good in this. We get to see David Arquette returning as Dewey, and then you have Courteney Cox returning as Gail Weathers. She's okay in the movie as well. I don't think her character or David Arquette's character, Officer Dewey, were as good in the second movie as the first one. And they're off at college, and people basically start getting killed and slayed by the Ghostface. And it sets up a string of murders and trying to figure out who's behind all this. So it's pretty predictable. I predicted who the killer was. I actually forgot who it was in the second movie, since I haven't seen this in like 20 years. And then early on, they kind of say who it is, so it's kind of stupid. What's the point of watching a horror movie if they kind of tell you who it is? So, you know, the reveal at the end is really underwhelming and predictable, so that was kind of shitty about it. And I will say the killings in this movie are not as good or memorable as the first movie either. They're all kind of sloppy. A lot of the dialogue is really forced. They're really missing that dark and dramatic aspect and scary aspect of the first movie. It just felt like it was a parody movie of the first one. They're spouting off all these shitty jokes, and a lot of the chemistry isn't there. It feels really forced. I don't think the writing was as strong, and that's sad because I love Kevin Williamson, but I thought the writing of his characters, the script was pretty predictable and just forgettable. Throughout the movie, they try to make you think it's this one person in college, but really the killer's this other person, and just it's like copy and pasted, the best way I could describe it to people. It just felt like nothing was original about the sequel, and it just felt like more of the same shit from the first movie, and it just didn't have the heart and the passion and the dark atmosphere that the first one had. Revolving around suspense and mystery, was just missing all those aspects. And really a movie they probably should have waited another year to put out, maybe thought about it a little more, a few different scripts to make sure it was perfect. And it felt like this movie was really rushed, and it definitely didn't have the appeal of the first film. So Scream 2 is definitely a movie that doesn't hold up after 20 years when it came out in 1997, so 23 years later. And I remember it being a lot better. The opening sequence is pretty cool. I like how they poke fun at the horror genre, but it was a pretty cool setup with a movie within a movie. Reintroducing a lot of the characters from the first film are definitely the better performances. I love Randy. Jamie Kennedy's always hilarious. He's always spot on, very sarcastic. He's definitely the movie buff like us here. He's much like a movie critic back in the day in the 90s, before YouTube. And I thought he was really great. Only if he had more screen time, I think he probably would have carried this movie a little more. And Neve Campbell was good. Not as good as the first film. A lot of the supporting cast is very forgettable. The directing wasn't as good as the first film either, sad to say. And the writing definitely was not there. Overall kill scenes were forgettable, not as good, not as well set up. And the effects weren't as good as the first film. And overall, just not a really great sequel. So that being said, I'm giving Wes Craven's Scream 2 a 2 out of 5 Sidney Prescott hairpieces. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on the sequel to Scream, Scream 2. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What did you guys think of that big reveal at the end? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. This is Logan Myerz signing out with Ghostface up here. Woo! Until the next horror movie review on 31 Days of Horror. Cheers!